My name is Mabel, and I'm 34 years old. 3 days ago, my mother called me for the first time in 8 months. Not to ask how I was doing, not to hear about her grandchildren she's never visited. She called to tell me I needed to sell my husband's land, $3 million in 2 weeks, to save the family from bankruptcy. The same family that didn't invite me to Christmas dinner because my husband wouldn't fit in. The same mother who told my sister's children that Aunt Mabel married beneath her. The same sister whose genius husband once called Ethan a glorified dirt digger to his face. And now they need us. Before I tell you what happened at my mother's 60th birthday party, what was revealed, and the choice I made, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this story. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Let me take you back to where this really began. 7 years ago, I was the daughter my mother bragged about at every garden party. Collegiate graduate, junior analyst at a boutique investment fund in Manhattan. The kind of job that made Victoria Ashford's eyes sparkle when she mentioned it to her friends. "My Mabel," she'd say, swirling her wine glass. "She's going to run Wall Street someday." I believed her. I believed that trajectory was my destiny. Corner office, designer suits, a husband with the right last name and the right portfolio. Then I met Ethan at a farmer's market in upstate New York. I'd driven up for a weekend escape. Burnout was eating me alive, and I needed air that didn't taste like exhaust and ambition. He was standing behind a wooden table covered in organic tomatoes and fresh herbs, wearing a faded flannel shirt and boots caked with mud. He wasn't handsome in the polished way I was used to, but when he talked about soil composition and crop rotation, his eyes lit up with a passion I'd never seen in any boardroom. I came back the next weekend, and the next. When I finally brought him home to meet my family, my mother took one look at his calloused hands and asked the question that would define the next 7 years of our relationship. "So, Ethan," she said, her smile thin as paper, "what's your real job?" He didn't flinch, didn't apologize, just smiled and said, "This is my real job, ma'am. I grow food." The silence that followed was deafening. My sister Clarissa leaned over to her husband Derek and whispered something. They both laughed. I pretended not to notice, but I noticed. And that was only the beginning. Our engagement party was supposed to be a celebration. My mother insisted on hosting it at her house, a sprawling colonial in Connecticut that she'd spent decades decorating to impress people she barely liked. 20 guests, champagne, canapes, the works. Ethan wore his best shirt. I could tell he'd ironed it himself. The collar was slightly uneven, and I loved him more for it. Derek and Clarissa arrived 40 minutes late, pulling up in a brand new Porsche. Derek made sure everyone saw it. "Nice wheels," someone commented. "Just a little reward," Derek said loud enough for the room. "Made partner at the fund last month." When he shook Ethan's hand, his eyes dropped to my fiancé's shoes. Clean, but worn, practical. "Nice boots," Derek said. "Do they come with the tractor?" A few people laughed. Ethan just smiled. "They do, actually. It's a package deal." Then came my mother's toast. She stood at the head of the room, champagne flute raised, and I made the mistake of hoping. "To Mabel and Ethan," she began. "My youngest daughter has always been independent, headstrong." She paused. "I just hope in a few years she won't regret throwing away everything she worked for this." She gestured vaguely at Ethan, at us, at the life she couldn't understand. I looked at my father. Robert Ashford sat in the corner staring into his whiskey, saying nothing. But my grandmother, Grandma June, reached over and squeezed my hand under the table. "I like him," she whispered. "He's real." That night, lying in bed, I made a decision. I would leave New York. I would build a life with Ethan, and I would stop waiting for my family to see what I saw. I just didn't know it would take 7 years for them to come crawling back. Vermont welcomed us like an old friend. We bought 200 acres of rolling farmland an hour outside Burlington. The house was a fixer-upper, Drafty windows, a kitchen from the 70s, a porch that creaked like it was telling secrets. But it was ours. Ethan threw himself into the work, dawn to dusk, sometimes later. He built raised beds, installed irrigation systems, negotiated with suppliers. I learned alongside him how to read soil, when to plant, what the weather meant for our crops. Within 3 years, our organic produce was selling at 6 farmers markets across the region. Within 5, we had contracts with 3 high-end restaurants in Burlington. And then came Lily. Our daughter arrived on a snowy February morning, screaming her lungs out like she had opinions already. 2 years later, Noah followed, quieter, watchful with Ethan's steady eyes. I had never been happier. But there was something I didn't talk about, something Ethan asked me to keep quiet. His work hadn't stopped at farming. During our first winter, while I thought he was just reading agricultural journals by the fireplace, he was actually finalizing patents, running calculations, taking calls with investors he'd known from another life, a life before the flannel shirts and muddy boots, a life at MIT. Ethan had a PhD in agricultural engineering. His thesis on precision farming technology had caught the attention of venture capitalists years ago, but he'd walked away from academia, from the startup offers, from all of it, until he didn't. He built his company quietly. No flashy launches, no press releases, just steady growth, real solutions, and clients who valued results over hype. They don't deserve to know, he told me once, meaning my family, and I don't need their respect. I never argued, but I always wondered what would happen if they found out. The call came at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was half asleep, one hand on Noah's back as he finally drifted off after a nightmare. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, and I saw my sister's name, a name that hadn't appeared on my screen in 8 months. Clarissa. She was crying. Not the delicate, performative tears I remembered from our childhood when she wanted something from Dad. These were ugly sobs, ragged and desperate. "Mabel, I need your help," her voice cracked. "We're in trouble, real trouble." I stepped out into the hallway, closing Noah's door softly behind me. What kind of trouble? Derek. Derek made some bad investments. He lost everything. The house, the cars, our savings. It's all gone. I leaned against the wall, processing. How much? 3 million. We need 3 million in 2 weeks, or Mom loses her house too. She put up the Connecticut property as collateral for Derek's trades. My stomach dropped. She did what? She believed in him. Clarissa's voice turned defensive, then crumbled again. We all did. And now you want me to what? Sell our land? It's just dirt, Mabel. You have hundreds of acres. Just sell a piece of it. Help us. I heard Ethan's footsteps behind me. He'd woken up, watching from our bedroom doorway with quiet concern. I need time to think, I said. Time? We don't have time. Clarissa's desperation curdled into something uglier. You owe us. We're family. Family? I repeated. The word tasted strange in my mouth. I'll tell you tomorrow. Pull. I hung up before she could respond, but as I stood there in the dark hallway, her voice echoed in my head, specifically one fragment that didn't make sense. Derek said your husband's company was supposed to fail. It was supposed to fail? What did that mean? I couldn't sleep that night. After Ethan went back to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, the blue light harsh against the darkness. I typed Derek's name into Google, adding hedge fund and investment. The results loaded slowly. Then I saw it. Mitchell Capital, partner Derek Mitchell, terminated following internal review. The article was 6 months old. It described Derek's departure from the fund as mutual, the corporate euphemism for getting pushed out. No details on why, but reading between the lines wasn't hard. Something had gone wrong, badly wrong. I kept digging. A financial forum mentioned his name in a thread about aggressive short positions. Someone had posted, "Anyone else see Mitchell's bet against that agritech startup? Dude went all in. Absolute madman." Agritech. My hands went cold.
I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Rachel Simmons, an old colleague from my Wall Street days who now worked in compliance. She answered on the third ring, her voice groggy. "Mabel, it's midnight." "I know, I'm sorry. I need a favor. This better be good. Derek Mitchell, you know him?" A pause, then a dry laugh. "Everyone knows Derek Mitchell, or knew him. That guy's a joke now. What happened?" "Massive short position. He bet against some sustainable farming tech company, bet his entire net worth they'd tank, and the stock went up 340%. He got absolutely wiped." Rachel yawned. "Whoever runs that company must be laughing their ass off. Derek bet everything on them failing. Poetic, really." I stared at the wall. "Whoever runs that company." "Thanks, Rachel. I owe you brunch. Call me next time you're in the city." I hung up and walked slowly back to the bedroom. Ethan was awake, watching me. "You found out," he said. It wasn't a question. I sat.
The way Derek looked at Ethan like he was something to be scraped off an expensive shoe. The dirt digger remark that still made my jaw clench. He wanted you to fail. He needed me to fail. Ethan's voice stayed calm, but I heard the steel underneath. He hated that you chose me over whatever he thought you should have chosen, someone like him. I guess it wasn't enough to look down on me. He wanted to profit from my destruction, and you just let it happen. What was I supposed to do, Mabel? Call him up and gloat? Warn him he was about to lose everything? Ethan shook his head. The best response to people like Derek is to keep building. Let them destroy themselves. I thought about Clarissa's desperate phone call, about my mother's house on the line. They're asking us to sell our land to cover his losses. I know. Losses he made betting against you. I know. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "We need to talk. Come to my birthday party. It's important." I showed it to Ethan. He read it, then looked at me. "Do you want to go?" I did, but not for the reasons my mother expected. The next morning, while Ethan fed the kids breakfast, I found myself searching again. This time, I typed his company name, Agrimind Technologies. The Forbes article appeared on the first page of results, dated 3 months ago. The MIT PhD who left academia to revolutionize sustainable farming. I clicked through, and there was Ethan, not in flannel this time, but in a simple navy sweater, standing in front of a greenhouse filled with sensor equipment. The photo credit listed a San Francisco studio. He'd flown out for this and never mentioned it. The article detailed his journey, MIT doctorate at 26, offers from major tech companies he turned down, years of quiet development on precision agriculture technology, and then this paragraph. Agrimind Technologies, now valued at approximately $47 million, has disrupted traditional farming metrics by combining AI-driven soil analysis with sustainable practices. Founder Ethan Farrington remains notably private, preferring to let the company's results speak for themselves. $47 million. My husband, the man my mother thought couldn't provide for me, had built something worth $47 million while wearing muddy boots, while driving the same truck he'd had when we met, while raising our children and loving our land, and never once needing to prove anything to anyone. I saved the article to my phone, not to brag, not to throw in anyone's face, but because I had a feeling I might need the truth to have a face. "You found it," Ethan said from the doorway. I looked up. Lily was clinging to his leg, sticky with maple syrup. "Why didn't you ever tell them?" He shrugged, hoisting Lily onto his hip. "Because it wouldn't have changed anything. They'd just find new reasons to look down on us." He was probably right, but I wasn't so sure anymore. Rachel called back that afternoon. "I found something," she said. "You're not going to like it." "Tell me anyway." She'd forwarded an email, a screenshot from an internal trading group chat that someone had leaked during Derek's termination proceedings. The message was timestamped 8 months ago. I read it 3 times. "My brother-in-law's little farm project is about to tank. Got solid info from an inside source. Their tech doesn't work at scale. I'm going all in on the short, going to make a fortune off his failure. The look on Mabel's face when they go bankrupt will be worth more than the money." The look on Mabel's face. He hadn't just wanted Ethan to fail, he'd wanted to watch me suffer. He'd wanted to prove once and for all that I'd made the wrong choice, and he'd used my mother's money to do it. I saved the email to a secure folder. Then I called my mother. She answered on the first ring. "Mabel, finally, you're coming to the party?" "Yes." "Good." Her voice softened, but only strategically. "We have a lot to discuss. The paperwork is ready. All you need to do is sign." "What paperwork?" "For the land sale. Derek's handled everything. It's very straightforward." I almost laughed. Derek's handled everything. Of course he had. "I'll be there Saturday," I said. "Ethan too." A pause. "Is that necessary?" "Yes, Mom, it is." She sighed, the disappointed exhale I'd heard 1,000 times. "Fine, but please, Mabel, don't make this difficult. We're family." I hung up without responding. Saturday, my mother's 60th birthday. 40 guests, a contract I was expected to sign in front of everyone. They wanted to use social pressure to corner me. They had no idea what was coming. The restaurant was exactly what my mother would choose. Crystal chandeliers, white linen tablecloths, a jazz quartet playing soft standards in the corner. The kind of place where people came to be seen being wealthy. Victoria met us at the entrance. "You came." Her smile was tight, her eyes calculating. She air-kissed my cheeks without making contact. "Both of you." "Happy birthday, Mom." "Yes?" "Well." She glanced at Ethan, then away. "Come, everyone's waiting." Everyone was about 40 guests spread across a private dining room. I recognized some of my mother's society friends, women who'd been judging each other's husbands and handbags for decades, a few of Derek's former colleagues, looking uncomfortable, distant cousins I hadn't seen in years, and at a corner table, Grandma June. She caught my eye and raised her hand in a small wave, but her expression wasn't celebratory, it was worried. Clarissa was already seated near the head of the table, her face blotchy from crying that she'd tried to cover with concealer. Derek sat beside her, jaw clenched, staring at his phone like it owed him money. "Mabel," Clarissa stood, her voice falsely bright, "so glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it." My father appeared from somewhere, a whiskey already in his hand. "Mabel, Ethan." He shook Ethan's hand, the first time he'd ever done so voluntarily. "Good to see you both." Something was off. The room had a strange energy, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting. I looked at Ethan. He felt it too. "Let's find our seats," I said. Whatever was coming, I wanted to face it sitting down. The main course had just been cleared when my mother stood up. If I could have everyone's attention, the room quieted. Crystal clinked against glass as she tapped her champagne flute. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate my birthday," Victoria began, her voice carrying the practiced warmth of 1,000 charity galas. 60 years, can you believe it? Polite laughter. Someone called out, "You don't look a day over 50, Victoria." She smiled, accepting the flattery like a queen receiving tribute. Then her expression shifted. "But tonight, I also want to talk about family, about what it means to support each other through difficult times." My stomach tightened. Victoria turned to look directly at me. "My youngest daughter has been blessed with a successful little farm, a simple life, but apparently a profitable one." Little farm, simple life. The words were poison wrapped in silk. "And right now," she continued, "our family needs her help." A waiter appeared from nowhere holding a leather folder. He walked directly to my seat and placed it in front of me. I didn't touch it. "All she needs to do is sign," Victoria said, her voice amplified by the silent room. "Just a small piece of land to help her mother keep her home." 40 pairs of eyes turned toward me. I could feel their judgment, their expectations, their curiosity about what the black sheep would do. Derek stood up, smoothing his expensive jacket. "It's a fair market price. The paperwork's all in order. Your husband's land isn't worth much, anyway." Your husband's land, not our land where we raised our children. "Go on, Mabel." Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. "You won't let your mother become homeless. You know what family means." The trap had been set. Now it was time to spring it. The whispers started immediately. "Poor Victoria," a woman to my left said loud enough to be heard. "Imagine having to beg your own daughter. Can you believe she'd even hesitate?" Another voice from somewhere behind me. Clarissa leaned forward, her face flushed. Mabel has always been the selfish one. She abandoned us to play farmer's wife while we handled everything here. I felt Ethan's hand find mine under the table, steady, warm. Derek circled closer, sensing blood in the water. Let's be honest here. Your husband got lucky with some dirt. The least you can do is share the wealth. That's what family does. The least we can do, I repeated quietly. That's right. He was enjoying this now, playing to the audience. I mean, what has he ever contributed? He plants vegetables. My grandmother could do that. A few uncomfortable laughs. My father sat frozen in his chair, staring at the tablecloth like he wished he could disappear into it. He was good at vanishing when Victoria needed someone to stand up to. Victoria pressed her advantage. So, Mabel, will you sign? She gestured at the leather folder. Or will you prove to everyone here that you never really cared about this family? The room held its breath. 40 people waiting for me to fold, to be the good daughter, to sacrifice what Ethan and I had built so they could maintain their illusions a little longer. 5 seconds of silence stretched into 10. Then I stood up, but I didn't reach for the pen. Before I answer, I said, my voice calm and clear, I have a question for Derek. His smile faltered just slightly. What kind of question? A simple one. I looked directly at him. Can you explain to everyone here exactly how you lost all your money?
No trembling, just facts. You're asking me to give away $3 million. I think everyone here deserves to know where the original money went. Victoria stepped forward. Mabel, this isn't the time. When is the time, Mom? I turned to her. When I've already signed? When it's too late to ask questions? Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I saw Grandma June lean forward in her seat, her eyes sharp. Derek, I continued, facing him again, you were fired from your hedge fund 6 months ago, weren't you? His jaw tightened. I left voluntarily. That's not what the financial press says. Internal review. Termination. I let the words hang. But that's not the worst part, is it? Clarissa's hand flew to her throat. Mabel, stop! You didn't just lose your job. You took Mom's retirement savings, the money she'd set aside for decades, and you invested it yourself, didn't you? Victoria's champagne flute trembled in her hand. He was trying to help. Was he? Or was he gambling with your future? The room had gone completely silent now. Even the jazz quartet had stopped playing, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Derek took a step toward me, his voice dropping to something dangerous. You don't know what you're talking about. Actually, I do. I pulled out my phone. I've spent the last 3 days learning exactly what happened to your fortune, Derek, and it's quite a story. He went pale. Would you like to tell them, or should I? Clarissa started crying. Victoria gripped the back of her chair, but Derek said nothing, so I continued. I opened the email on my phone. Derek made what traders call a short position, I explained, keeping my voice steady for the audience. That means he bet against a company, bet that its stock would crash. If it did, he'd make millions. This is ridiculous, Derek spat. You don't understand finance. I worked on Wall Street for 4 years, I reminded him. I understand it fine. I held up my phone and read aloud. My brother-in-law's little farm project is about to tank. Got solid info from an inside source. Their tech doesn't work at scale. I'm going all in on the short, going to make a fortune off his failure. Gasps scattered through the room. The look on Mabel's face when they go bankrupt will be worth more than the money. Dead silence. I lowered the phone. Derek didn't just make a bad investment, he specifically targeted my husband's company. He bet everything, including Mom's retirement, on Ethan failing. Victoria's face had gone chalk white. Derek, is this true? He couldn't meet her eyes. I had good information. It should have worked. He wanted us to fail, I said. He wanted to profit from destroying us, not because it was smart business, because he hated that I chose Ethan over someone like him. Clarissa's sobs grew louder. Several guests were already gathering their things, looking for exits. And the company? Derek's voice cracked. What happened? What? It didn't fail, Derek. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. It grew 340% in the past year. His legs seemed to buckle slightly. You lost everything betting against a company worth $47 million. Now the murmurs became something else. Shock, confusion. 47 million? Someone whispered. The farmer's company. It was time. An older man near the front, one of Derek's former colleagues, raised his hand like we were in a boardroom. Wait, what company are we talking about here? I opened the Forbes article on my phone and handed it to the woman nearest me. Pass this around. The phone moved from hand to hand. I watched faces change as they read, confusion giving way to disbelief, giving way to something like awe. The MIT PhD who left academia to revolutionize sustainable farming, someone read aloud. Agrican Technologies, valued at $47 million. Founder, Ethan Farrington. The name landed like a bomb. Derek shoved through the crowd to grab the phone. His hands were shaking as he stared at the screen, at the photo of Ethan in his navy sweater, standing in front of his greenhouse. That's... His voice had gone hoarse. He's just a farmer. He plants vegetables. Ethan had been silent this entire time, sitting calmly beside me. Now he stood, and somehow the room felt smaller. I am a farmer, he said, his voice quiet but clear. I'm also an engineer. I have a doctorate from MIT. He paused. The two aren't mutually exclusive. You could have heard a pin drop. Victoria's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. Nobody moved to clean it up. From the corner, Grandma June's voice rang out, thin but triumphant. I always said he was the smartest one in this room. She was smiling now, her eyes bright. Nobody listened. The room erupted, whispers, exclamations, guests pulling out their own phones to verify what they just heard. And Derek just stood there, the Forbes article glowing on the screen in front of him, watching his entire narrative collapse. $47 million. The dirt digger was worth $47 million. The chaos settled slowly. Guests found their seats again, but the energy had shifted completely. They weren't looking at me with pity anymore. They were looking at Victoria. My mother stood frozen, broken glass at her feet, mascara beginning to smear at the corners of her eyes. Mabel. Her voice was small now, nothing like the commanding tone from minutes ago. Please, we're still family. Whatever Derek did, Mom, I kept my voice gentle but firm. I'm not signing anything. But you have the money. You could... Yes, I could. I picked up the leather folder she'd so carefully prepared and set it aside, untouched. But this land isn't mine to sell. It's Ethan's legacy for our children, our home, and I don't have the right to give that away. Clarissa lifted her tear-streaked face. So you're just going to let Mom lose everything? You spent 7 years telling me I made a mistake, I said, addressing the whole room now. You excluded me from Christmas. You told my nieces that I chose poverty. You cut me out of family photos because Ethan wouldn't fit the aesthetic. Victoria flinched. And now you're asking me to sell our land, our children's inheritance, to cover losses from a bet made against us? I let that sink in. Think about that. We didn't know, Victoria whispered. I didn't know what Derek was doing. Maybe not the details, but you gave your retirement money without asking questions because you believed in him, in the image he projected. I paused. You never believed in us. The words landed hard. I saw my mother sway slightly. Having money doesn't mean I owe it to people who spent 7 years hoping I'd fail. Nobody spoke. The leather folder sat on the table between us, unsigned. Ethan placed his hand on my shoulder and stood. The room went still again. Mrs. Ashford, his voice carried effortlessly, calm and measured. I never needed your approval. I stopped expecting it a long time ago. Victoria couldn't meet his eyes. But I also never wished you harm. Mabel loves you, even when you've made it difficult. He let that settle. So I want to make something clear. He took a step forward. I won't sell our land. That's not negotiable. But I'm willing to help you keep your house. Victoria's head snapped up. What? A personal loan, enough to cover the immediate mortgage payments and give you time to sort out the rest. He paused. Not 3 million, but enough. Hope flickered across Victoria's face, desperate, grasping hope. But there are conditions. Derek, who had been skulking near the wall, stiffened. 1. Derek repays every cent with interest over 5 years, documented, legally binding. Ethan's gaze shifted to my brother-in-law. 2. He gets professional help for the gambling problem, verified attendance. 3. You never ask us for money again, ever. I'm not taking charity from him, Derek snarled. Ethan didn't blink. Then don't, but that's the only offer you'll get from us. Clarissa grabbed Derek's arm. Derek, please, this is humiliating. Derek shook her off. You expect me to take a handout from the guy I... He stopped himself, but everyone heard what he didn't say. The guy I tried to destroy. This isn't revenge, Ethan said quietly. This is a boundary. Learn the difference. Victoria looked between her son-in-law and her youngest daughter's husband. The choice was written on her face. Pride versus survival. She didn't answer, but Derek was already grabbing his jacket, storming toward the exit. This isn't over, he spat. Nobody stopped him from leaving. Okay, I need to pause here. That moment when Ethan laid out those conditions, I saw my mother's face change. She finally understood something she'd missed for 7 years. We weren't the ones who needed them. They needed us. What do you think happened next? Did she accept? Did Derek come back? Drop your prediction in the comments before I continue. And if you're enjoying this, share it with someone who needs to hear this story. The restaurant door slammed behind Derek. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Clarissa let out a broken sob and ran after him, her heels clicking against the marble. The spell shattered. Guests began reaching for their coats, making excuses. Lovely party, Victoria. We should do this again sometime soon. So sorry about everything. They couldn't get out fast enough. Within 10 minutes, the room that had held 40 people was nearly empty. Just the family remained. My mother, my father, Grandma June, Ethan and me, and broken glass still glittering on the floor. Victoria lowered herself into a chair. She looked older suddenly. The careful facade cracked beyond repair. Her 60th birthday party had become the night.
She hadn't said a word since Derek left. I wondered if she ever would. A week later, the updates started trickling in. Clarissa called first, not to apologize, but to tell me she and Derek were separating. She'd discovered credit card statements he'd hidden, debts she'd never known existed. I don't know who I married, she said, her voice hollow. I thought I knew. I didn't say I told you so. There was no satisfaction in it. Victoria sold the Connecticut house, not because she had to, Ethan's loan offer still stood, conditions and all, but because she couldn't face the neighbors. Word had spread. By the morning after the party, her phone had stopped ringing. She moved to a smaller condo in Hartford. Clean, practical, nothing like the showpiece she'd spent 40 years curating. She didn't call me, no apology, no acknowledgement of what had happened, but no accusations either, just silence. My father, though, Robert, surprised me. He called every Sunday, short conversations at first, awkward and halting. How are the kids? How's the farm? Weather treating you well? But he kept calling, week after week. For the first time in 7 years, my father was trying. Grandma June did more than try. She bought a train ticket and showed up on our porch 2 weeks after the party, a suitcase in one hand and a tin of homemade cookies in the other. I'm staying a month, she announced. I want to know my great-grandchildren properly. Lily and Noah adored her. She taught them to play cards, told them stories about the farm their great-great-grandfather had owned, let them help her bake. I watched them together one afternoon, June laughing as Noah tried to crack an egg, shells everywhere, and felt something I hadn't expected. Not victory, relief. There's a difference, a small one, but important. I was sitting on the porch when it finally hit me. Late September, the leaves were just starting to turn, and Ethan was out in the field with the kids, teaching Lily how to check soil moisture. Their laughter carried across the farm like music. 7 years ago, I'd been terrified, not of leaving my job, not of starting over, but of losing my family. I'd spent so many nights lying awake, wondering if they were right, if I was throwing everything away for a man they'd never respect. I'd been waiting for them to see me, to really see me, not the Columbia graduate, not the Wall Street analyst, not the daughter they wanted me to be, just me, Mabel, with dirt under my fingernails, and a man who grew tomatoes and happiness in equal measure. But I'd been waiting for people who were looking in the wrong direction. "You okay?" Ethan had appeared on the porch steps, Noah on his shoulders, Lily trailing behind with a fistful of wildflowers. "Yeah," I smiled. "Better than okay, actually." He sat beside me, settling Noah between us. Lily climbed onto my lap, presenting her flowers like treasure. "For you, Mama." "They're beautiful, baby." Ethan caught my eye. "You're thinking about them a little." And I watched the sunset paint the fields gold. "I think I'm done waiting." He nodded. He understood. Boundaries aren't punishment, they're protection for yourself, for the people who matter, for the life you've built. I couldn't make my mother love me the way I needed to be loved, couldn't force Clarissa to see past her own insecurity, couldn't fix what had been broken for decades. But I could choose differently. I had Ethan, Lily, Noah, Grandma June, and a father who was finally trying. That was enough. That was more than enough. A month later, Grandma June came down for Lily's 6th birthday. We held it on the farm, nothing fancy, just a picnic table covered in wildflowers, a homemade cake with lopsided frosting, and enough laughter to fill a cathedral. After the candles were blown out and the kids had run off to chase fireflies, June sat beside me on the porch swing. "I have something for you," she said. From her pocket, she pulled a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, antique gold with a tiny sapphire. Simple, beautiful. "This was my mother's," June explained, "and her mother's before that. I was saving it for the right moment. Grandma, not for you," she smiled. "For Lily, when she's old enough. I want her to have something from the women who came before." I took the box carefully, feeling the weight of generations. "Your mother might never understand," June said softly. "She's too caught up in what things look like to see what they are. But I understand, and I'm glad, so glad that you chose happiness over approval." I leaned into her, this tiny, fierce woman who'd been my anchor when everyone else drifted away. "Thank you, Grandma, for everything." "Just keep being yourself, sweetheart," she patted my hand. "The ones who matter will find their way to you. The rest, let 'em go." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the fireflies dance across the darkening fields. My mother hadn't called. Clarissa was still sorting through the wreckage of her marriage, but my father had sent Lily a birthday card with a check inside and a note that said, "I'm sorry I missed so many. I won't miss more." It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was real, and real, I'd learned, was more valuable than perfect could ever be. Thank you for staying with me until the end. This story took a lot to share, but your comments and support make it worth it. If any part of this resonated with you, if you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your self-respect, I'd love to hear about it. Drop your story in the comments. For more stories like this, check the video in the description. Until next time, take care of yourself and remember you're allowed to set boundaries, even with family, especially with